Alright, in this video we're going to talk about simple interest. We're going to start discussing a little bit about money. So this is one of those opportunities you get to learn about how does some of the real world work in terms of how money is exchanged, how it's invested, how it's loaned to people, how it's borrowed from people. That's what we're going to talk about a little bit in this section. We're going to keep it simple though. We're going to talk about something called simple interest. This is essentially any time money is borrowed or loaned, you're going to have to pay it back with interest to say thank you for letting me use that money. One moment. Okay, so we're going to keep it simple in what we're doing with calculating interest. So the first thing you have to do is, for each of these questions, let's give ourselves a structure. Let's give ourselves something to follow. You're going to be following this formula. You're going to be following I equals PRT. Think of that as PERT. I stands for the interest, meaning the amount of money you made. Because remember, we said that you're loaning people money, and their way of saying thank you and making it worth your while for you to do so is they're going to pay you interest. That interest is some kind of extra money that you're going to earn. Okay. So if you look at the definition, actually, simple interest is the amount of money paid or earned for the use of money. They're kind of paying you for letting you use their money. For letting them use your money, or vice versa. If you're the one that borrows the money, you're going to pay them back with interest. So I stands for interest. P stands for principal. That's the amount that you borrowed, or that's the amount that you deposited into the bank account, or that's the amount that someone loaned to you, or you loaned to them. The principal is that initial amount that was exchanged, that was temporarily lended to the other person. Your rate, well, that's a percentage, and that's going to be an interest rate. But it's going to be in the form of a percentage. So what you're going to do is you're going to do what we've always done. You're going to turn it to a decimal in order to use this equation. So the rate is a percentage. T stands for time, and time is going to be measured in years. Technically, there's different forms of this equation where time can be measured in months or even in days, but we're going to keep it simple and keep it basic. We're going to do time measured in years. So you either borrow the money for multiple years or 1 year, or even if you look at example 2 for 6 months. Well, 6 months, that's half a year. So when you go to do time is 0.5. It's going to be half a year. And so you totally can do things that are in between. You'll just have to have a decimal for the time. So that's what each item equals. So that means the interest you've earned. This is the principal, the initial amount that you've borrowed or loaned or deposited. This rate is the percentage of interest that you'll either be gaining or paying. And then T is time in years. So in every single question, you're going to plug in for they're going to give you 3 of these 4 things. You notice there's 4 things total. They're going to give you 3 of the 4, and you'll solve for you will solve for the 4th one you don't know. Generally speaking, most of the questions that are real basic are just going to give you these 3. They're going to tell you how much was borrowed or deposited or whatever. What is the rate and how long did it take to pay it back? So it'll generally give you these 3 things, and they're going to ask how much interest, how much money was earned on top of that. That's how the first year we're going to start off. Then we'll start doing a few more advanced questions. So let's take a look at example 1. In example 1, it says, find the simple interest earned in a savings account where $136 is deposited for every 2 years if the interest rate is 7.5% per year. They're not saying they deposited $136 every year. They're saying they deposited it once, and they want to know in 2 years how much interest did it earn. So the amount they deposited, that initial amount, that's going to be the principal. Okay, so that's going to be our principal. So you're going to plug that in where P goes. So P is normally the first number. This question says we're solving for how much interest did we earn. So for this question, I'm going to set up over here on the side, even though you already see it. I'm going to set up over here. We now know the principal amount. The principal amount is $136. Next comes the rate amount. They said the interest rate was 7.5% per year. So now turn that into a decimal. As a brief reminder, 7.5%. Going from a percent to a decimal, you move it to the left, just like your ABCs, to go from P to D. Move it to the left 2 times. So that turns into 0.075. That is 7.5%. And now finally, time in years. They told us 2 years. So that tells us T is going to be 2 out here. So this is your equation. This is your formula. You've plugged everything in. 136 times 0.075 times 2. All you gotta do is with your calculator multiply all of this together. And when you multiply all that together, you'll find out how much interest you earn. And so if you multiply those together, you're gonna get 20.4, but since we're talking money, that's $20.40. So that means the amount of simple interest that you have earned for yourself is $20.40 in this example. So in that example, you earned $20.40 of interest. That's how much you made. In other words, just for putting the money in the bank account and not touching it, the bank is going to give you a little bit of money as a way of saying, hey, thanks for keeping your money with us and thanks for letting us use it to do stuff. Like sometimes they might loan it out. Even though they may use that money, don't think that ever means you can't go get your money. They're going to let you get your money out of your savings account, and they'll just have to make sure they have that money available for you. So that was example 1. Let's take a look at example 2. In example 2, it says find the simple interest for, in other words, how much money did we make in addition to what we invested. Find the simple interest earned for $600 invested, so that's our principal. So I'm going to already start by writing it. At 8.5%, well, that's our percentage, except we have to turn that to a decimal, 0.085, for 6 months. Oh, in this example, 6 months, that's not in years, and we said T is in years. But I already gave it away earlier, 6 months out of 12 months, 6 months out of 12 months, 6 divided by 12, well, that's 0.5. So that's how we know that the time is 0.5. So we're talking 0.5, that'll be our time. If we multiply all that together, that will give us our interest earned. How much interest did we earn from this investment? So multiply all of these together. And if you multiply all of them together, interest, that is going to equal 25.5. We're talking money, so that's $25.50. And so that's how much money you earned on this investment. You earned $25.50. That's how much you made on top of the $600. So if the question had said, well, hey, how much do you have total after 6 months? If it had said, what is your total amount of money do you now have earned from the total value, there we go. What is the total value of your investment? You would do $600 plus $25.50. So you would say $625.50. That's what you would say if it ever asked what was the total value of it, and you will have some questions on the end of your homework that will say that. They'll say, what was the total value after 6 months or 2 years or whatever? Just like in example number 1, if they had asked what was the total value, we would have taken the initial $136 and we would have added $20.40. So $156.40. That would have been the total value of that savings account. So keep that in mind. We can count. Most of these questions are going to ask us just what was the interest earned, but some of them might ask what is the total value. And you only have a few homework problems, but you'll definitely have some problem-solving practice problems, those applied problems that'll ask things like that. So let's do a few more examples. In the next one, I'm going to kind of just do it for you a little bit, but if you think you understand how to calculate the interest earned at this point, like finding I, hit pause before the next one and give it a shot yourself. All right, I'm going to do questions number 3 and question number 6. Those are the two I'm going to do. So hit pause and try numbers 3 and number 6 on this screen. And what I'll do then after that is I'll even hit pause and I'll let you hit pause, try a few of the other questions, and I'll actually give you the answers to all of the ones on this screen right now. So you have plenty of examples to check yourself with. All right, so for starters, if you think you can do these, hit pause now and then hit play. Say I did number 3. And then if you're still nervous, watch 3 and then hit pause for number 6. I'm going to explain those full depth. So take a moment, hit pause if you haven't done so already. All right, it says find the simple interest earned to the nearest cent for each principal, interest, rate, and time. So remember, those are the 3 things: principal, rate, and time, and that's what each of these questions are going to give us. So in all these questions, they're just asking how much interest did we earn. So $575, that's our principal. This is at 4.5% is our rate, and 4.54 years is our T, is our time. So that means the interest earned will equal, now let's just plug everything in, $575. And now just remember, 4.5% needs to be turned into a decimal, so 0.045%. If you're having trouble turning that into a decimal, take a look at one of our older videos. Or just remember, anytime you convert from a percent to a decimal, you essentially are dividing by 100. If you divide by 100, you're going to move the decimal 2 times to the left. And then multiply that by 4 years. So take your calculator and multiply all these together. So 575 times 0.045 times 4. That's going to give me a 103.5. So I equals 103.5, which means $103.50. That is how much interest we earned from this. We don't know whether it was an investment or a loan or savings account. They all work the same in this regard. We just know how much money we made on our money. So if the question had said what was the total value, you would take $103.50 and you would add it to $575. That'd be the total value after 4 years. Otherwise, if it's just, most of these questions are going to ask how much interest did you earn, and that's how much interest you earned. So if you weren't feeling confident about that one, now hit pause, try number 6. Number 6 is going to be exactly the same thing, except I'll give you a hint if you don't know it already. For number 6, 1 3/4, when we're doing years, go ahead and make that a decimal, make that 1.75 years. So that's what T is going to be when we go to do that question. We're going to say 1.75. So hit pause if you haven't done so already and give that question a shot. We have our principal, we have our rate, and we have our time. So we're just going to plug each of those in. And that's it. It's literally every single time, guys. Principal times rate times time. Principal times rate times time. Now, this is one of those formulas that will be on a reference sheet for you, so you don't have to really worry too much about having to memorize it. But just being able to understand how it works, that's probably going to be your best bet anyways. %, as a decimal is 0.11. Remember, 1.75 for those years. 1.75. Okay, so let's see. 2105 times 0.11 times 1.75. Okay, that gave me a decimal that's going to need to be rounded. They said round to the nearest cent for a reason, but anytime you're dealing with money, you're going to round to the nearest cent anyways. So I'm going to write some of the decimals, but not all of them. Actually, I think this might be all of them. Okay, so we got 405.2125. So it's time to round to the nearest cent. Well, that 1 is in the cent location, so you go to the next one to tell you how to round it. The next one's a 2. A 2 means round down, which means leave it as a 1. So that means we're talking 21 cents. That's what we're dealing with here. So our final answer is we're going to say $405.21. That's how much interest we earned on this investment or loan or bank account, whatever the question may have phrased it as. They're all the same. It's just based on whose perspective are you looking at. For some people, it's how much interest they earned, and some people, it's how much interest they owe, depending on were you the one that loaned the money or received the money. So take a moment to think about how you did on that question. All we're doing for all of these is just plugging in for principal, rate, and time, and then multiplying them together. Before I show you the answers to the other questions on the screen, I do want to point out and let you know, this is not the only form of interest earned on money. A lot of things in the actual financial markets use something called compound interest, and compound interest is not what we're talking about right now. If that's maybe some students who think they're ready for it in the 7th grade, I can introduce some of that to them. But otherwise, that's usually an Algebra 1 topic. It's something that is you earn interest on your interest, and in other words, if we go back to question number 1, we'll say, and question number 1 up here, if you earned 5% in 1 year, so 5% of 300, that's $15. So you earned $15 in year 1, and then simple interest says you earned $15 in year 2 as well. But the way compound interest works, just as a quick comparison, that's not what we're talking about, but I'm just letting you know, is at the end of year 1, we just said at the end of year 1 you made $15. Well, that means the value of your investment is $315 now, the $300 plus the $15 you earned. So the value is now $315. So now during year 2, you're going to earn 5%, but it's now going to be 5% of $315. It's no longer going to be 5% of $300. So at the end of year 1, you have $315, but at the end of year 2, let me tell you what you would have, times $315, you're going to have $330. That's how much you're going to make in year 2. You're going to make $330. That's not at the zero. $330.75. So each year that goes by, you make more each year. And that's because in the second year, you got interest on year 1's interest. Well, in year 3, you're going to get interest on year 2's interest. So it builds on top of each other. That's how a lot of interest works in the real world. I just wanted you guys to know that we're not going to make it that complicated. We're keeping it simple. We're doing what's called simple interest. And there are things out there. There are financial instruments or financial agreements that are made using simple interest. Because it keeps it simple. People don't have to think too hard about it. And it's easy to calculate what to expect. So sorry for that side tangent. I just wanted you to know the difference between simple interest and compound interest. You'll learn more about compound interest in the future. So for now, hit pause if you need some more practice and try out these other questions on the screen. I'm going to hit pause. I'm going to write the answers. I'm going to leave them up there for a couple seconds, and I'm going to move on. That way you have a few more practice problems to check yourself with. All right, so go ahead and check your answers off of these ones that I just popped up on the screen. And as a note, on question number 8, I converted the 3 months to 0.25 years because that's 3 months out of 12 months, which is equals 0.25. One moment. So yeah, we converted the months to years as 0.25. 0.25. I want to point out, when you have, real fast, when you have percentages like in 5 and 7, the rate that you're going to use, make sure you're converting that rate correctly. When you go to multiply by the rate in number 7, it's going to be 0.0875. That's what you're going to have inside of your formula, like where we had 0.045 and the one up here, number 3. That's what you're going to be using in questions like number 5 and number 7. So take some time to think about how you did on those. And then we'll do a few more examples. We're going to do some word problems though. In the examples we're going to be doing next, we're not going to be solving for the interest earned. We're going to be kind of doing some slightly different sideways calculations, meaning what else can we figure out? Like let's say we knew the interest earned, but we're going to do questions where maybe we didn't know the rate, or maybe we didn't know how much time, or maybe we didn't know the principal. That's what we're going to solve for. We're going to use our formula skills. All right, so we're going to do this word problem, and then we're going to do 2 more tougher word problems, and then we're going to be all done with the video. And so just nothing but more examples. So in this question, I'm going to let you do something on your own first, but I want to give you some tips first. It says Serena has $2,500 to invest in a CD. If you don't know what that is, a CD is a certificate of a deposit. It's essentially like an IOU. Your bank can do CDs. A lot of financial institutions like banks and different companies can do CDs. It's essentially, you're giving them money, they're going to give you a certificate saying, we're going to give you back that money plus this much interest. And they'll give you like an interest rate that it's worth. But then you can't get that money back until the CD has run through. Sometimes you can get it early if there's a penalty. But in this regard, we're just going to keep it simple. She's got a $2,500 investment. We can think of it as an investment. That's what a CD is, not a musical disc. So let's answer each of these questions. Part A says, if Serena invests that amount and it yields 4% interest, what will it be worth after 2 years? This is one of those situations where you're going to find the interest earned, and you're going to add it to the $2,500. That's how much it's worth after 2 years. So for this question, I've kind of prepared you for it already. Calculate I, and then add I, the interest earned, to the $2,500, and you'll have your answer for A. So press pause when you get a chance and give that a shot before I do it for you. In part B, it says she would like to have this much grand total value. And now, if the rate was this, and if and this is how much she wants to have, how long does she have to wait in order to have $3,000 total value? So we're going to be solving for time in B. In question B, we're going to be solving for T. We're going to be solving for time. And then for A, we're just going to be solving for I, and then we're going to add I to P, add I to the principal. That's what we're essentially doing in part A. We're going to find the interest, then we're going to add the interest. That's a plus sign, not a T. Notice my T's have little swoops in them. So we're going to find the interest, then we're going to add it to the principal. Well, in part B, we're just going to find the time. In part C, it says they gave us the principal, they gave us the time, and it gave us the interest. They said, what is the rate in part C? So in part C, we're going to find what was the rate. What rate would get her that response? What would make her this much money in this amount of time? So if you think you can understand how to do these, based on what I've said, press pause and tinker with these questions for a couple moments, then hit play and see how you're doing. But give yourself a chance to think about it and try it on your own first. You'll benefit a lot from doing that. All right, I hope that you definitely hit pause. Now let's go through and knock these questions out. And part A, it says if she invests $2,500, well, that's your principal. 4% interest, well, that right there, that is your rate. What will be the CD worth after 2 years? That's your time. So we're going to do what I said. We're going to find the interest earned, and then we're going to add it to the original principal we had to start with. So $2,500, remember, it's principal times rate times time. $2,500 times the rate. 4% as a decimal is 0.04 or 0.04. We multiply that by the time, and the time is 2 years. So let me grab that calculator. He's our friend. I don't expect you to do all these questions by hand. So 2,500 times 0.04 times 2. That's 200. Oops, excuse me, guys.
Good afternoon, Winter.
Okay, so we found out it was $200 of interest earned. And so what we did is we took the $200 of interest earned and we added it to the original $2,500 investment to give us our total value. So when you add the interest earned to the original investment, you'll know how much grand total is that CD worth. It's worth the $2,500 they have to pay you back, plus it's worth the $200 in interest that you've earned. So grand total, that CD, that certificate of deposit, has a value of $2,700. So now if you haven't already tried B or C, give those a shot. I'm going to go ahead and start setting them up. Okay, so it says she would like to have $3,000 altogether. Well, that's not your principal. That's your total value after you've done this step, after you've added your interest to your principal. She wants to have $3,000 total. And they said that the interest rate is 5%. And so in this question, they want to know how many years will it take in order for that to happen. So here's what I want you guys to realize. If she's put in $2,500 and she wants $3,000, that means she wants to make $500 in interest, because that's $3,000 minus $2,500. So she wants to make $500 in interest. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to say, how long is it going to take her to make $500 in interest? That's what we're going to do. So that means in our formula, interest equals principal times rate times time. We actually know the interest amount. So we can actually fill in I put all those caps locks for some reason. We're actually going to fill in for each of them, for the ones that we know, and solve the ones that we don't. We know the interest, we know the principal, we know the rates, we just do not know the time. So that's what we're going to solve for. Oh, 1 second. So plug in for everything that you have. You have your $500 of interest, you have your $2,500 principal, you have your rate as a decimal. We just don't know the time. So we're going to solve this like we would any other equation. We're going to multiply these together and then move that to the other side to solve for t, to get t all by itself. So let's start by multiplying them together. And if you do that, you have 2,500 times 0.05, and that's going to give you 125. So that tells you have 125t equals 500. So that means 125 times t number of years equals $500 of interest earned. So just like any other equation, you have to solve for t by getting rid of the coefficient. So divide both sides by 125. This fraction bar means divide. And so you're left with t equals 500 divided by 125. Well, that's 4. So that means t equals 4 years. So that means it's going to take 4 years for her to make $500. And if she makes $500, she'll add it to her $2,500 investment, and then she'll have the $3,000 altogether that she's wanting to have. So it'll take 4 years for her to get that value up to $3,000. So she can plan ahead for that. This can be used to help people make decisions to plan ahead. How long do I need to save to have the money that I want to have? So now in questions in part C, if you haven't done so already, press pause and see if you can give that one a shot based on the skills you just saw used in part B, where you're going to plug in for what you know, you're going to solve for what you don't. That's what you're going to do in part C. So hit pause if you haven't done so already. In part C, you know your principal, you know your time, and you know your interest. You know your interest. It says, and earns $255. It wants to know what was the rate that would make that happen. So it's going to be just like similar to the last one, but now we're going to be solving for the rate instead. So instead of we actually can put 255 in the interest location, and that goes first. So 255 equals, well, the principal we just said was 2,500, and then we don't know the rate, so I'm just going to put an R for the rate, but we do know the time, and the time is going to be 3. So that's plugging in for your formula, everything you know. We've plugged in for the interest, we've plugged in for the principal, and we plugged in for the time. We're just going to use our equation skills to multiply 3 and 2,500 together, because just because it says R's in the middle, when you multiply, the order doesn't matter. 1 moment, please. Sure. All right, well, 3 times 2,500, that's going to give us 7,500. So we have 7,500 R. That's going to equal 255. So far we've simplified it down. We have 255 equals 7,500 times R. So we have to solve for R. We have to get R by itself. So we're going to divide both sides by that coefficient. Give me 1 moment. If you go ahead and multiply those, if you go ahead and divide both sides by that, 255 divided by 7,500, well, that's going to give you 0.0 0.3434, and that's a decimal, but we were looking for a rate as in a percentage. So don't forget to turn this decimal back into a percentage by moving it 2 places to the right. So that means 3.4%. That would have to be the rate in order for her to make $255 in 3 years using her initial $2,500 investment. The rate's going to have to be 3.4%, and that's something a business might use to negotiate. What do they need to make? What do they need to borrow? What do they need a loan or whatever? And so they're going to demand a certain rate in order to get the money they need in the time that they need it. So we're going to do a couple more word problems, a little bit slightly different ones like this one, where we're using the skill we talked about. And for each of them, make sure you hit pause first and try them first on your own, because now this problem should have gotten you ready for thinking of it in a slightly different way, not just looking for the interest earned, but maybe looking for one of the other pieces of the formula. So hit pause before we do each of them and make sure you give them a shot. Alright, so give this question a shot and see if you understand what's going on, and it'll help you do it. And if it helps, maybe I'll read it for you and give you some hints. It says Raj won the $900,000 in a regional lottery. After paying $350,000 in taxes, he invested the rest of the money in a savings account at 4.25% simple interest. So that means before you do anything, subtract the $350,000 out of the $900,000, because that's how much money he really had, because he had to pay the rest he paid out in taxes, so that he didn't get to keep it. So he had remaining $550,000. That's going to be the principal amount that you're going to do to work this question through. So hit pause, and if you haven't done so already, give that question a shot. Alright, so I've identified the important information. We said the principal was $550,000 because he had to pay taxes off of the $900,000, so he didn't really get to invest the full $900,000. The rate is
Round 2.
Oh, sorry about that. One moment, please.
Round 2.
Okay, so if we plug each of them into our formula, put the principal where P goes, put the rate where R goes, and put the time where T goes, plug in for each of these. If you multiply these together, it's going to tell you how much interest he made in 2 years. But if you read the question, they don't just want to know that. They want to know... I apologize, one moment. So if you do that, so if you multiply all those together, your principal, your rate, and your time, you find out he earned $46,750 in interest. But the question says, how much money is in the account if he makes no deposits or withdrawals? Meaning, he has the original $550,000 plus he now has the $46,750, and so that's how much he has total. So I'm going to go ahead and just add those together. So if we add those together, our 46750 plus 550,000, we get a total of $596,750. So his grand total that he has as of right now in that account, with no money being taken in or out, he has $596,000 and $750. $596,750. There we go. That's how much money his account has in it right now, and that's for doing nothing. He literally didn't have to do any work. All he had to do was put his money in there and let it sit there, and the man made some money. Some people can do that. Maybe you'll be able to someday. We're going to do one more example, and in this example, make sure you hit pause and try first on your own. Just think about how you did in this one. And I'm going to show you one more. Alright, take a moment, try this question on your own, and press pause before you do anything else, and see how you're doing on this one. I probably should have done this one before the last one. I think the last one was a bit more complicated. This one's a bit more simple. So hit pause and try this one out. You know what her principal amount was, and you know the rate, and you know no money was taken in or out. So they want to know what is the grand total value of it, meaning the initial $500 plus the interest earned. How much is it worth after 8.5 years? So hit pause, give this one a shot, and then we'll be all done. Alright, so let's knock this question out. The principal is $500. So as we go to do our formula, we're going to find our interest first. So that means we're going to start by doing principal times rate. Our rate is 5.6%, so as a decimal, that's 0.056. Our time is 8.5 years. Well, as a decimal, to help us using the calculator, it's going to be 8.5 years. So now just multiply all this together, and this will tell you how much interest she earned in 8.5 years. So 500 times 0.056 times 8.5. And that tells you she made $238. That's how much interest she earned, $238. So if she earned $238, we're going to add that to the original $500 she started with. We're going to add those together, and that's going to tell us total what she's working with. So let's see, that's 837, so 738. That's how much money her account's worth. Her account is worth $738, and that's what she did, and that's what she now has after 8.5 years. That's what it's worth to her. So for doing nothing but putting the money simply in the bank for the bank to get to use until you're ready to take it out, she made money just from doing nothing. So that's one of the reasons why people do this, and they keep their money with financial institutions. So when you go through each of these questions, just remember, it's going to be the same formula every single time. Interest equals principal times rate times time. And you're going to, sometimes, most of them will just be solving for the interest earned. But sometimes they want you to then do something else, like maybe add it to the original. What is the total value after all that time? Or sometimes they'll give you the interest, the principal, and the rate, but not the time. You have to solve for the time. Or sometimes they'll give you everything but the rate. You'll have to solve for the rate. Or they might even give you everything but the principal. Like, how much money do you have to put up in order to make this much money when it's at this rate and this much time to make it? How much money do you have to put up in order to make that happen? That could be a decision you might want to make as a business or as an investor. So this is something that people use all the time to help them make informed decisions for business deals or even for personal financial deals. If they're trying to set up their retirement for when they retire, or maybe it's your parents trying to save up money for your college education, if they're able to do that. This is one of those skills that is a realistic skill that is used in our economy. It's used all around our world. So don't neglect this. It's using the skills we've learned with percentages and use them to help you predict and understand and calculate how much money you can make or owe sometimes if you need to borrow that money, because the companies sometimes just want to say thanks, because from their point of view, you may loan money to a company, like whether it be with like a savings bond or a CD or maybe sometimes a loan. If you loan a company money, or even if you're an investor, they're going to say, hey, thanks for that. I'm going to use that money to go start my business or expand my business. So I'm going to make and build a bunch of stuff, and I'm going to sell and make money. And then this is their way of making it up to you. For them, they're going to be like, okay, I'll come back and give you $238 on top of the $500 I owe you. And that's my way of saying thank you for letting me expand or start my business so that I can make more money for myself. So they are more than happy to give you interest on your money. So don't think of this as taking advantage of people. This is a part of business. This is how people make money. This is why how there's an incentive in order to help people start businesses, or maybe help people, remodel their house or pay for college, stuff like that. So it's a win-win situation for everyone involved. The person receiving the money is able to do something they otherwise would not have been able to do, and then the person who loaned that money is getting rewarded for taking that risk and loaning that person that money. And so interest on money is a nominal concept, but it's something that's used every day. So just give yourself perspective to know. Maybe next time you want to help your parents predict out a planned investment or maybe a big purchase, talk about maybe saving up money in order to do that. Maybe you can help be a part of that decision to feel like you are contributing. So remember to practice, guys. Plug in for what you know, solve for what you don't using your equation skills. Good luck.